King, and you're listening to the Air Raid Hour, a Buffalo Fanatics video experience.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at Judge Mathis, joined as always by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. Together, we are the Bills guys. This is the Air Raid Hour presented by Buffalo Fanatics. And how are we all doing tonight? As the title suggests here, the Bills shake a sluggish start to defeat the Miami Dolphins 26-11. Who we got in the comment section tonight, Dave?
We had many people in here early tonight. King Thriller was in first, said Bills are back, baby, onto Jacksonville, take down the generational talent. Zachary King's in the building. Corey Buffalo is back. Don Handsome, Brian Bowers, Jason Sugg, Matthew Montgomery is back tonight. We got Jessica Tennis just down the street from me. Jessica in Morrisville, North Carolina, right down the street. Philip Gong, Terrence Reese. We've got Lone Wolf in the house. Don Keith, I can never say his name right. Dan Van Kuenberg, who's also a regular of ours. Chris Meager, Eric B. We've got Brian Bowers already coming with a super chat right off the top. Randy Hardman is in, and others filing in. Smiles Blake and others. So Brian comes in right off the top with a super chat, and
yeah, he's coming in hot.
He's coming in hot. Feliciano is trash, and I hope all of you have seen enough of him getting pushed around and bullied like a little bitch. Change needs to be made now.
And a change is going to be made over the next couple of weeks because Sean McDermott announced today that John Feliciano is out week to week with a calf strain. So due to injury, he will be replaced in the Buffalo Bills starting lineup. But yeah, I mean, is he really injured? Like, I know he left that game late towards the end, so he probably is injured. But some really convenient timing for the Buffalo Bills because ever since last year's AFC Championship game, he has been tossed around like a rag doll by some of the better interior linemen in football. He had a crucial penalty in this game that could have been really detrimental as well. And just, I mean, the offensive line just ain't pushing anybody. They're not playing very well. And John Feliciano is a huge part of the problem. And we're going to talk today about what's wrong with the offensive line, what's going on, what's the deal. Are there any deals that can be made at the trade deadline to possibly beef up this offensive line? So we're definitely going to address all of that and more tonight. And, John Feliciano has got the ire of many Bills fans, myself included. I sent out a tweet today about what I would like to see at the trade deadline. In one scenario, I had the Bills trading for Andrew Norwell and Will Hernandez and just straight up cutting John Feliciano. I was given some slack for that, but he's a good backup. I don't care. I'd rather have Ryan Bates as a backup at this point than John Feliciano. Just because he plays video games with Josh Allen doesn't mean he belongs on this football team. I said it before, and I will say it again, but people were a little surprised. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it was an historically bad start. I got some numbers here from Tim Graham of The Athletic, who said it was one of the weakest first halves of the 21st century. That includes the JP Lossman era, the Trent Edwards era, the EJ Manuel era, etc. He stated in Nathan Peterman's 5 interception game where he threw 5 interceptions in the first half, the Bills still scored a touchdown before halftime, which means they had scored more points than they had scored in the first half of this game. He said in the 6-3 Cleveland Browns game from all the way back, I believe it was 2013, like way back, that epically awful game we lost 6-3. We had more yards and we had more first downs at the half than we did in this game yesterday. I mean, it was an absolutely brutal start for the Buffalo Bills, but there were a lot of people in the comment section who were predicting a rout. They're like, yeah, the expectation is the Bills score 30, the Bills score 40. We beat them by 20 points. Oh, we shut them out again, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I had made the comment both on the preview show on Thursday and on the BF tailgate. And I even tweeted out on like Tuesday of last week. I'm like, I feel like people are a little overconfident, a little over cocky, not because the Buffalo Bills aren't the better team. I made the comment on the tailgate. If the Buffalo Bills lose this football game, it's not because the Miami Dolphins outplayed them. It's because the Buffalo Bills didn't show up. And sure enough, like eventually over the course of that football game, that sort of bore out in the second half. But I mean, it was a divisional opponent. They'd seen us before. They got healthier. They have 2 elite corners, right? And Xavier Howard and Byron Jones. Raekwon Davis was back, a guy who didn't play in that first game. Really helped them in the run game. They were extra motivated after we crushed them last time. I think it was to be expected that this was going to be a closer game than maybe some people had prognosticated. What were your thoughts on just the overall game and how close it was?
Yeah, I had a group chat with a couple of my friends who are Bills fans as well, and we kind of said the same. We were like, look, we think this is going to be closer than maybe people think.
Mhm.
Miami, as much as it's kind of been a flop of a rebuild, if you will, for Flores and Tua, right? As that pair kind of has really disappointed off of their really, I guess, above expectation season from a year ago because of how good that defense played. And obviously they had Ryan Fitzpatrick in for some of that time as well. This has not gone the way Miami had thought it would go this year. No one, I mean, I
Mhm.
don't think a lot of people thought they would be this bad. I think people maybe thought, okay, last year they maybe overachieved a little bit. Maybe they'd be like a 500 team or a little worse, but they're just bad this year. It doesn't seem to be working with Flores and Tua. Um, and their defense, while it's still good, is not as good as it was last year. So all those things said, you were like, okay, that should equate to a Bills shellacking of this team, but they can still get up and play. It's a division game. We saw, we saw what the Jets did to the Bengals. We saw the Jets
Mhm.
beat the Titans. We saw, other teams around the league struggle. We saw, I mean, right now the Chiefs are struggling with the New York Giants. So like this can happen, and especially in a divisional game, you just never really know. And while I will say this, the Bills did eventually get it going, and because Miami is so bad, we didn't really have a ton of threat that they were going to really ever take over this game. So
Mhm.
it was annoying to wait. It was frustrating at times, but eventually they kind of got it together and they did. And I will say this too. You mentioned them getting healthy. Um, Devontae Parker, he might be the second best receiver in the AFC East behind Stephon Diggs. Like I know like people are partial to Beasley and Sanders, but that dude is legit when healthy, a
Mhm.
really good receiver. His problem has always been, can he stay on the field? And he had a really good game yesterday, and he even made Trey look bad a couple times. But Devontae Parker is a very good player, and Jalen Waddle. Obviously, they wanted to compliment him with compliment Parker with Waddle, but Devontae Parker, a good player as well.
Mhm.
Miami gave it everything they had, and clearly everything they had is just it wasn't gonna hold up
Yeah.
for 60 minutes.
Yeah, a lot of great comments coming in the comment section. I put a couple of them up already. Matthew Montgomery came in and said, like, we played two relatively finger quotes bad games against Miami Dolphins on offense, and we still managed 60 plus points over the course of the two games that we played them. But in looking at this offense, I want you to tell me whether you think this is true or not. Watching
Okay.
this offense in the first half, it looked like it was an offense that was trying so hard to prove that there's something that they're not. One of the biggest flaw on this football team right now is they cannot run the football. And we're going to talk a little bit about why it is. Can't they run the football? Is it the offensive line? Is it the running backs? Is it a combination of both? Well, is it the offensive line coach Bobby Johnson? Like, what percentage of blame do we place and where do we place it?
Mhm.
Josh Allen calling plays, changing plays at the line, Brian Dable drawing up the plays, etc. There can be blame that can be assigned in certain places here. But it seems to me like a team right now that sees the running game as their flaw, and they are doubling down on that flaw to prove to themselves that they can do it. And it's stunting their offense right now because it took them to the second half for them to realize we can't run the football. Like, because they were trying so hard to prove to themselves that they could run the football. Is that what it looked like to you out there in that Miami game?
Well, yes and no. I mean, if you look at, I guess you can't just look at the box score because in the early goings, yes, it seemed like that. If you look at the box score and you see they only ran the ball 20 something times and 8 of those were Josh Allen, you'd say, well, they didn't really run the ball that much in this game. But if you actually look at what they tried to do early in the game, they tried to come out and run with Singletary a couple times. They tried to run with Moss. Couple of those runs got blown up, yards for loss or runs for loss. And there's just no push, right? And there's no push.
Mhm.
And it wasn't even just the offensive line, right? I didn't think Tommy Sweeney was blocking that great from when I went back and rewatched the game. I didn't think he blocked that great in the run game either. So missing Dawson Knox, also an effect on the running game in my mind. That collectively with the offensive line
Mhm.
not getting a ton of push, I think that can't be understated as a group. That the run blocking group run blocking unit, so the tight ends and the line did not perform well. Couple of those plays where Singletary kind of broke loose, seemed like he kind of made that all happen on his own. We know the Feliciano penalties were there, but the push just wasn't there from the interior. I mean, Bucker on the left side it was okay. Feliciano got pushed back a lot. The run blocking was not good. And I'm not going to, we're talking about the run game right now, but the pass blocking wasn't good either. So collectively, this offensive line, I think, is just underperforming in the run game. Like you said, were they trying to do too much early? Were they trying to kind of establish that run? Maybe. But Josh Allen was still throwing the ball a lot. And to me, it was an issue of protection as well. So I think overall, when we start talking about like run game, passing, the offensive line becomes the focus here as the issue.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, I've been going to a number of different sources, just trying to figure it out, because on first watch, it's like the offensive line fucking sucks. Like they're terrible. Like they're getting no push whatsoever. I made the comment on Thursday, like if these running backs were on another team, they'd probably be having statistically better seasons and people might be talking about them more. They just don't get they're just not getting the run blocking. But then I see some other people that I, respect. And whose opinions I respect. Merck on Twitter, Joe Marino on Locked On Bills. It says, yeah, even though the running game isn't getting a push, there are still running backs out there that are able to put up numbers, even when their offensive line isn't the greatest in the world. The Buffalo Bills just don't have those running backs.
Yeah,
Joe
but
Marino
how many running backs are there?
Yeah, and
how many running backs can do that? AP in his prime, Barry Sanders, like who can do that?
And that's to the point that I think I want to make here is, yes, it's nice to have. It's nice to have a good running back and all that stuff, or a great running back, a running back who can do that. But if you look at this football team right now, what is an easier problem to fix? Going out and finding a running back who can do that, or fixing your offensive line? And to me, fixing the offensive line is a much easier fix than going out and finding a running back with the traits you're looking for. Joe Marino made a great point on his podcast this morning, Locked On Bills. Every time you hand the ball to Devin Singletary or Zach Moss, you're taking it out of Josh Allen's hands. Josh Allen is your best football player. This is a team that should be funneling the football through Josh Allen. The ball should be in Allen's hands 40 to 50 times a game, and it should only be in the running back's hands 10 to 15 times a game. And to a point where we're passing so much that the running backs can pick up some nice chunks because the defense isn't expecting that run. We have dynamic weapons on this offense. Stephon Diggs, Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley, three of the best route runners in football. Sanders and Diggs also give you that take the top off the defense type of deep threat. You have bigger bodies in Gabriel Davis and Jake Kumaro and Dawson Knox. You have a running back who's shown some promise out of the backfield in Zach Moss. And you also have a nice gadget guy in Isaiah McKenzie. The Buffalo Bills don't need to run the football, period. End of story. They don't have to do it. They are choosing to right now. And they're taking the ball out of Josh Allen's hands when he does it. And part of me thinks, are they gun shy after that Pittsburgh game where they tried to be this passing team and Pittsburgh ate them alive at the line of scrimmage and we couldn't pass block? Because that's the only reason I can think about why they're trying to force the run game down our throats and down opponents' throats when it's clearly not working and when it clearly goes against common sense to take the ball out of the best player to take the ball out of the hands of the best player on your football team.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that to some extent, especially in the last two games. The Pittsburgh game certainly maybe had an effect on that. Obviously, the offensive line got abused in that game, but I will say this too: the offensive line pass blocking hasn't been as good as it was last year either. So there could be an element of that as well to say, look, maybe it's not so much we're trying to force the run game as maybe it's like we feel like we need to balance this out a little bit more because our pass blocking isn't what it was, and we don't want to get Josh Allen killed if he's dropping back there 50 times a game. Now, that's a risk you're going to have to take if you think about it, because he, like you said, he is your best player. The Bills are still a top 10 rushing team in the NFL on a yards per game basis, as hard as that may be to believe. But obviously, Josh Allen plays a factor in that as well with his running ability. So to me, I liked that Josh Allen ran the ball a few times more in this game. Like he usually runs more against Miami than he does against other teams. But yes, I do think that Pittsburgh game may have played a factor. I do think just generally the pass blocking hasn't been as good either. And to be honest with you, I knew we were gonna talk a lot about the run blocking tonight. So when I went back and watched the game, I really focused a lot on the pass blocking to see what that looked like. Not impressed with that either in
It
this
wasn't
game.
great.
Okay,
It wasn't great either.
it was not good. Feliciano was getting pushed back into Josh Allen. Mitch Morse was getting pushed back into Josh Allen a bunch. Go back and watch it. You'll see he
Mhm.
did not have a lot of time. The plays where he did get time, he made the Miami Dolphins pay for the most part. And so that's also an issue. So you have to weigh the risk of letting them tee off on him, 40, 50 times a game versus,
Yeah.
hey, he's your best player. And if you're the Bills, that's a problem for you. And this offensive line, is kind of the starting point for all of these issues, in
Mhm.
my opinion. And just talking really quick about the running back thing, I Saquon Barkley, right? Top 5 pick. Injuries aside, say what you want about him. The dude was awesome his rookie year. He's one of the best running backs in the NFL if he's on the field. That Giants offensive line is
Mhm.
horrible. His yards per carry this year is awful. I know he's missed some games, but like even putting Saquon Barkley behind a bad offensive line doesn't he can't even make anything happen there. So
Mhm.
I get what Joe's saying, and I respect Joe a lot, but I'm gonna go
Mhm.
with you on this and say it's much easier to fix the offensive line
Yeah.
in this situation.
And we got Brian Bowers in here says the Bills seem to not understand their identity. Throw the effing ball and mix in the run. Forcing the run is a waste of time. Beasley is always open. Diggs is elite. Sanders still has it. Come on. And I agree with you. And on top of those 3 weapons, you could sprinkle Zach Moss, Dawson Knox, Gabriel Davis in there, Isaiah
Yep.
McKenzie in there, Jay
Yep.
Kumaro in there. Like,
Yep.
there's plenty of other guys that you can sprinkle in there. Like, you could spread that football out. I'd like to see Isaiah McKenzie get involved in the run game, whether it's jet sweeps or you can supplement the run game with the passing game. You saw the Buffalo Bills run a ton of screens this week and short stuff just to get 3-4 yards. Matthew Montgomery mentioned getting way too cute and trying to run the ball on like 2nd and long, and every analytics website out there will tell you like how fucking dumb that is. So that's really Brian Daboll going against everything he's been talking about. Zachary King makes a really, good point talking about how, maybe we do have to add a running back just because we're depending on Josh Allen to run the ball now. And he's getting kind of digged up and you're worried that he's going to get the cam treatment. And it's going to really take a toll on his body. That's something that you're going to have to start considering soon. It's not a worry yet because we haven't seen it yet, but that's something where we're one hit away from that now being a concern.
What happened to those jet sweep push passes that we used to give
Yeah.
McKenzie? Like McKenzie this year has 2 receptions for 4 yards.
Yeah.
2
It's
receptions
crazy.
for 4 yards for Isaiah McKenzie.
And
Like
Gabriel Davis
I
has
know
been invisible too.
I
It's
know I
weird.
know he's not a high volume guy, but like the
Mhm.
Bills used to kind of mix him in on those push passes, those jet sweeps. Like he is not
Yeah.
involved in the offense at all this year,
I
which is kind of unfortunate.
And Matthew Montgomery comes in and says, we do have to realize as a fan base, this is weird for us to criticize such a good team, like Jerry Seinfeld nitpicking his girlfriends.
I mean, yes,
And
that's
that's a
what
great point.
expectations are different now, right?
I mean, the standard is the standard, right? As Mike Tomlin would say, and the standards and the expectations for this football team is super high. Don't get me wrong. I'm out there and and this is weird for me. People were blowing up my phone in the first half of this football game. Our boy Fabili was blowing up my phone. My dad was blowing up my phone. Everyone was blowing up my phone. And my response back to everyone blowing up my phone was like, I'm not worried yet. I'm not panicked yet. Calm down, relax. We'll figure it out. There was not an iota of panic in me that entire football game. The only thing I think that would have really made me start to panic was if that Isaiah McKenzie muff would have turned into something bad for us.
Yeah.
But there was not an iota of panic in me. I felt confident the Buffalo Bills were going to turn it around and cover the spread even. Like I felt pretty confident that they were going to cover the spread, even as we entered the second half when people were freaking out. And that's because and it's weird for me because I'm a guy who usually lives and dies by every snap. I'm trying to not be that person, mostly because I want to live past the age of 50. So I've been really working on it this year, trying to not live and die by every snap and understand that this is a good football team and just enjoy the ride. I mean, it's the Bills, it's the Ravens, it's there's a couple of other teams that I might be forgetting out there. The Chargers are kind of slipping down a little bit now. You saw New England take them down a peg and the Ravens take them down a peg. I guess you could still throw the Raiders there. I mean, the AFC East is just so crazy competitive right now. But at the end of the day, the expectations are high for this football team. And I think that's why we're here trying to figure out, like, all right, we got to get this thing rolling. We got to get this thing rolling. We got to find our sweet spot. So when the playoffs hit, we're firing on all cylinders. And I think that's where we're coming from as Bills fans right now. And it's a good time to take that reflection because we're about to get into the trade deadline, which is tomorrow, which we're going to talk about in a second. But before that, we have a super chat here from Jeff King. He says, if anyone wants to sugarcoat yesterday, have at it. I deal with reality. Reality is O-line sucked, run game sucked. Josh's long ball sucks and has for 75% of the season, not winning a Super Bowl with this play. I mean, Josh Allen is 6th in the NFL in average air yards per attempt and completion. So, I mean, he is hitting the ball downfield. He did miss a couple, deep shots here and there, but I mean, most of his passes, he's completing down the field. I think one could argue that he's trying too much to push the ball down the field. Like in the first half, if he was taking some of those checkdowns that he did in the second half, like when the second half first started, check down, just slowly moving the ball down the field, death by 1,000 paper cuts. All of a sudden, the running game started to work a little bit. All of a sudden, Stephon Diggs on a deep pass for a touchdown, and things of that nature opened up because Josh was just taking what the defense was giving him, picking up 4 yards here, 6 yards here, 7 yards here, moving the ball down the field, and the defense had to adjust. The first half, it's like, let's try to run the ball right through down their throats, and let's try to shove the ball down the field. And there was really no short to intermediate stuff until the second half. And I feel like that's what opened it up for our offense. I don't know. What were your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Like, I get where Jeff's coming from on that. Because like on the, if you want to call them like the air them out long balls, not great. I agree with him there. But the 15 to 20 yard routes, the 15 to 20 yard plays, that is where Josh was excellent last year, and that's where he continues to be really good this year. So his yards per attempt does look high because of that. And like if you're looking for those, I'm not comparing Josh to JP, but if you're looking for those JP Lossman to Lee Evans type deep balls, that's not this offense. That's probably not what we're gonna get. Like you might see that every once in a while to Diggs, maybe every once in a while to a guy like Gabriel Davis, but where Josh lives is in this sort of intermediate to long passing game. It's not this 3 to 6 yard passes. It's these 10 to 15 to 20 yard passes that really start adding chunk yardage. So as long as he continues to excel in that area, I'm not going to be too worried about Josh, honestly. And Matthew makes a good point there about the Bucs losing to a backup QB. You look around the NFL yesterday, team struggled, man. I mean, the Jets lost to the Bengals. I know there was some questionable play calling. The Saints, did beat Tampa Bay. That was in New Orleans, so give them that. But with Trevor Siemian, right? We had the Titans beat the Jets a couple weeks ago. The Bengals got smoked by the Ravens a couple weeks ago. So it's weird, right? And the Bills didn't play their best game, and they still won by 15 points. So Randy says, I think we're playing very vanilla, down some pieces versus the team they've proven they can handle. I think they were playing down a bit. I think they did play down a bit, especially in the first half. I think in the second half, they did enough to obviously make it look pretty good at the end. But I think if you ask any of the Bills players, they'd come back and tell you, like, we didn't play our best game. But they also know that we're still early in the season and there's a ways to go.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, Nate Geary on WGR mentioned the fact that, like, where is all this window dressing that Brian Daboll is known for? Like the pre-snap motions and all that stuff that we're really not seeing. And I don't want to think that the Buffalo Bills are holding things back. That would be weird. You think they would have unleashed it in the Chiefs game? I didn't really see a lot of window dressing in the Chiefs game. You think they would have unleashed it against the Titans? Didn't really see it against the Titans. Like, you think they would have unleashed it to start the second half of this football game when they had such an historically bad start to the football game? Like, you think they would have went into halftime and we're like, all right, cool, let's show off a little bit of more window dressing. That was an historically bad first half. Like, that shouldn't have happened. But no, they came out in the second half and were pretty much doing the same thing. They were just taking some passes they weren't taking in the first half. It's crazy to me. But we got a couple people now talking trade deadline here. Philip Gong coming in saying, Andrew Norwell and Kyle Fuller, please. I'm done with Feliciano and Wallace. We'll get to the DBs in a little bit here, but I don't think the Bills are done with Wallace. And I think the Bills are pretty content with what they have in their secondary right now. I can't picture the Buffalo Bills making a move for any defensive player right now. I don't think there's a single defensive player out there that would intrigue the Buffalo Bills. I think the Buffalo Bills are A-okay with the personnel that they have on that side of the ball. I think if there is a change, if the Buffalo Bills do make an addition, it'll probably be at the running back position, or it'll probably be along the interior of the offensive line. I think Bruce Noel made a great comment. He said a couple of years ago, the Buffalo Bills thought they were in a position to end the drought, and they went out and they got themselves Kelvin Benjamin. So we're going to talk about the trade line in a second, but Jeff King coming up with another super chat here. He says, that's my point. Take what they give you, enough of trying to push it when you're not connecting, because he's off by yards, not inches. I don't give an F about stats. Take what's there. Yeah, I'm with you. And this offense has the personnel to do that. All the pieces are there. You got the three of the best route runners in the National Football League. Of those three of the best route runners in the National Football League, two of them are legitimate deep threats who can take the top of a defense in Diggs and Sanders. You got big bodies in Davis, Kumaro, and Knox. You got guys who can work the intermediate in Beasley, Knox, Gabriel Davis. You have and Diggs and Sanders too, because they can just pretty much do fucking anything. And then you have, guys like Zach Moss and guys like Isaiah McKenzie who can contribute in the passing game. There's no reason why Josh Allen should throw the ball under 40 times any game unless we're just smoking people. This offense should be funneled through Josh Allen. And there are plenty of playmakers in the passing game to make it work without a legitimate running game. You can supplement the running game with certain aspects of your passing game, and we certainly have the weapons to do that. And I think that would take some of the pressure off the offensive line. But if we are going to make a move, these are the four names that I have on my list of guys that could be trade deadline candidates. I don't have Marlon Mack on my list. Marlon Mack is on a couple of people's lists. I've seen in the comment section now. I don't see anything different in Marlon Mack than I do in Devin Singletary or Zach Moss. Coming off an ACL injury, he hasn't really had a chance to prove there's anything left in the tank there. They just released Jordan Wilkins, which means that they're down running backs in that depth chart. So maybe they're planning on keeping Marlon Mack there in Indianapolis in case something happens to Jonathan Taylor, who's been their absolute workhorse. And like I said, I don't see anything different than Devin Singletary or Zach Moss when I look at Marlon Mack. The two running backs that I have on my list that the Buffalo Bills should consider, number one, despite the fact that he sprained his ankle, he'll still be out a couple more weeks, Miles Sanders. That is a guy who's a real difference maker. That is a guy who is a complete back. He's got size. He's got speed. He can break the big one. He can take a ball 75 yards. When you take the ball out of Josh Allen's hands and put it into Miles Sanders' hands, people aren't like, what? You're giving the ball to a talented football player. The other running back that I have on my list is Melvin Gordon. He is a guy, again, with that top end speed who can take it to the house. He is a guy who can contribute in the passing game as well.
So and Denver's in sell mode now at this point.
Denver's in sell mode.
They just traded Von Miller. My best friend who's a Broncos fan is like, clearly Patton's done with this season. Next guy up, Melvin Gordon. Get rid of him. And
the Drew Lock announcement is coming anytime now. David Kane says, no way we trade for Miles Sanders. He's in it's been the talk of Philly since Nick Sirianni got there. Like, what the hell is Nick Sirianni doing? He's not giving the ball to Miles Sanders, and then Miles Sanders goes and gets hurt as those sort of rumors were heating up that Miles Sanders wasn't a part of the future there. They got Kenneth Gainwell. They got a couple other running backs that they like there. So I think a guy like Miles Sanders could be on the block. Melvin Gordon, I mentioned. The two other guys I have on my list here of trade candidates, they're both offensive guards. Andrew Norwell in Jacksonville. He is on an expiring contract, a 1-year, $12 million deal, just like the LA Von Miller deal. LA said, we're going to give you a second and a third round pick for Von Miller. You eat almost his entire salary. The Rams are only going to pay him $700K on an expiring deal. The Broncos are eating $9 million. If you're going to the Jacksonville Jaguars, you're saying like fourth round pick, maybe throw Cody Ford in there to sweeten the deal. It's an offensive guard. It's a different position than obviously a Von Miller. You're not going to offer as much, but if you sweeten the pot enough to Jacksonville, you probably get Jacksonville to eat most of that contract. You can bring Andrew Norwell to Buffalo for practically nothing on an expiring deal. And if it works out, you can extend him into the future. And then Will Hernandez is a guy at the end of his rookie deal. The New York Giants are not a team who's competing. He's not as proven as an Andrew Norwell, but he's got some high upside there, higher upside certainly than what we got. I wouldn't mind if we swung a deal for both of them. And I placed a scenario on Twitter today.
I want to ask you a hypothetical about Norwell.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you, no players involved, would you give up a third round pick for Norwell if there was a really good chance that you could re-sign him.
Mhm.
Would you give up a third?
I would not. No, I would not. I wouldn't.
See,
The free
I
agent
consider it.
market. I just read an article on PFF about all the upcoming free agents at guard, and I mean, there's quite a number. Wyatt Teller's up for as a free agent.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine that reunion?
Andrew Norwell was on that list. There was a couple other veteran guards that were on that list, and they even made the point on Pro Football Focus. It seems like every year guards are released. So I wouldn't make that deal now. I mean, I get that we're all in, but there's all in, and then there's like super desperate.
Well, but is it though? Because if you
Mhm.
if you trade a third rounder for Norwell, and that's it,
Yeah.
and you can re-sign him and you can extend him, and you go back and you look at the history of this regime with interior offensive linemen, whether it's in the draft or whether it's signing, it's probably been one of their weakest areas. They drafted Cody Ford, hasn't really worked out. Signed John Feliciano, that hasn't really worked out. They let Quentin Spain go for whatever reasons he was let go. Fine, he was still let go. You brought in Fortis Lamp, that didn't work out. Butker, Bates, these guys are replacement. Like, my point being is that this regime hasn't really done the best job of developing, some of this is on Bobby Johnson, but hasn't really done the best job of finding guys in the draft and or signing guys at guard. So if Norwell is out there, who is a guy that someone else took the chance on drafting and developing, and we know who he is, he's a known commodity. To me, I wouldn't necessarily mind going that route if you knew you were going to have him beyond 2021.
Yeah, we got Jessica Tennis coming in saying if you don't go long, the windows get smaller and smaller. This is what happened with Tua. His windows are smaller and gives the defense an advantage. That was one of the things that Joe Marino pointed out on Locked On Bills this morning that I thought was super interesting. Not to change topics too much here, but he mentioned when he talked about the secondary, the DBs like Trey White, Jordan Poyer, Wallace, and he mentioned coaching and how one of the ways in which the Buffalo Bills strategized against Miami Dolphins was they played on sort of like the inside shoulders of the wide receivers. I can't remember the exact technical terms he was using, but essentially they were playing the wide receivers in a manner where they weren't going to give them the inside and they forced the receivers outside. Why? They were going to test Tua's arm and they were going to make Tua make those uncomfortable throws outside of the sticks and test his not so strong arm. And you saw the end results of that. Levi Wallace had a solid game. Trey White, they kept throwing at him and they had some success, but there were definitely more incompletions when throwing to Trey White than there were completions. Tua Tagovailoa had a 53% completion percentage. And Jordan Poyer had that pick to end the game. So the Buffalo Bills had a lot of success because they were, because they were following along that game plan that they had made for themselves. Now you can also make the argument that there were a couple of throws over the middle of the football field where it was like, yikes. But that seemed to be Miami was running the ball a decent bunch, even though they weren't having success with it. And our linebackers were biting a little bit. So, there's a little bit of give and take there. But at the end of the day, the Miami Dolphins scored 11 points and Tua's stat line was awful. It was terrible. So clearly the Buffalo Bills defensive game plan worked. What were your thoughts on the secondary there?
Yeah, I mean, people are going to nitpick, right? Levi Wallace, Devontae Parker was doing pretty well in the first half, and a lot of those were not on outside throws. They were on inside throws, on slants, things of that nature. But second half adjusted well, forced them back to the outside. Devontae Parker, much quieter second half. And Levi Wallace even made himself a nice few plays there in that second half. So I was I was not too worried at all about the secondary. I figured the Bills were going to, allow some stuff underneath other than the one big play to Parker really down the sideline. And I think it was the very first drive of the game that Miami had the ball. Like the big plays, other than, there was the one to Dissected, I think, that went down close to the goal line, but that seemed more like a busted coverage than it was anything that the Bills were doing from a technique standpoint. So I'm not, I forgot I changed my face to put on
Why'd
your
you do
logo
that?
there.
I got some allergies, so I'm gonna turn my camera off real quick while I sneeze.
Well, I didn't know it was going to change for both of us. I thought we each had our own avatar. So I'm talking to myself now, but yeah, I was not upset with it. I thought that the secondary overall played a very good game, especially in the second half, really kind of shut them down. And like you said, you could tell they were forcing Tua to go to the outside a lot more, and he just could not hit those throws.
Yeah, we got Philip Gong coming into the super chat. Always appreciate Philip. He says, hypothetical, how do you feel tomorrow if at the end of the trade deadline we traded for Norwell, Sanders, Hernandez, and Fuller? I think to myself that I wasted a lot of time on my podcast with Randy Hardman scouting college football for next season. But I mean, who wouldn't be excited if the Buffalo Bills added 2 starting interior offensive linemen that would allow their offensive line to be left to right? Deion Dawkins, Andrew Norwell, Mitch Morse, Will Hernandez, and Spencer Brown. Who wouldn't be excited with a high upside player who has been disappointing this year in Kyle Fuller in a defense like this across from Trey White, and with a multi-dimensional back who can take the ball to the house from anywhere on the football field, back there in the backfield without Josh Allen. We would be the best team in football, best roster in football, no doubt in anybody's mind. But we would, Les Snead would be a little envious of I think the deals that we are making, if we are making those deals. I don't think that Brandon Beane has that type of deal making in him. Randy Harmon with a great comment says, even though we know Trey is not elite, he's still doing a pretty decent job this year. I mean, he does a decent job every year. I mean, the man, he's getting paid a decent salary. He's probably a top 5 to 10 corner in the National Football League. He's certainly one of the best zone corners in the National Football League, and that's the type of defense that we run. So unless the Buffalo Bills are going to be switching to a man-to-man defense anytime soon, I don't see an issue with it. I would like a number 2 who might be a little bit more physical and aggressive than Levi Wallace, but Levi Wallace hasn't really embarrassed himself too much this year either, and Teron Johnson's a pretty physical nickel despite his lack of size. So
Trey White's the least of our problems, man.
Yeah, and the secondary is really the least of our problems as well. Looking through the notes here, some things that I still want to talk about. Josh Allen, he's the new betting favorite in Vegas for the MVP of the National Football League. That caused quite a stir today. I liked Matt Perino's comment to all the people that were bitching about it, like Aaron Schatz, who just loves to shat all over the Bills whenever he can. He's like, is the season over yet? He's the betting favorite for a reason. People are looking at his schedule and they're looking at his statistics and they're prognosticating what the future is going to hold for Josh Allen compared to some of the other people in the race. I mean, the guy's got 17 touchdowns to 3 interceptions passing. If you count in the rushing statistics, he's got 20 touchdowns to 4 turnovers because he lost a fumble. The Bills are now 20-0 when Josh Allen passes and runs for a touchdown in the same game. He's averaging 6.7 air yards per completion, which is 6th in the NFL. And he's a fucking badass waving goodbye to Christian Wilkins at the end of the football game. That really got
under Kev's skin, man. Kev was not happy about
Kevin
that.
wasn't. I didn't see any of Kevin's comments.
Yeah, Kevin called Josh Allen an ass. Said Kev was upset.
He was in his feelings. He was in his feelings.
He was. And Kev's usually pretty level headed, but he was upset with that. He was upset.
I think Josh Allen was probably taking out a little bit of his anger from the first half of the football game where he struggled a little bit. I mean, you saw him. Josh was having a little bit of a temper tantrum on the sideline heading into halftime. He was getting pretty worked up. I was personally nervous when I saw Josh Allen getting worked up at the sidelines. I was expecting some dumb throws, some bad throws, some hero ball to come. And
there was there was some bad play. There was some bad play, but none of that.
Nothing really turnover worthy. Nothing really turnover worthy. So kudos to Josh Allen for. I think he says he goes to. Stephon Diggs whenever he needs to find his zen. I think Sean McDermott was talking about something like that. I've been busy today, so I haven't seen too much of the post game pressers or anything like that. But yeah, Kevin was big in his feelings apparently about Josh Allen 17. Here's the thing: like, you have a problem with it, fucking win. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, Allen,
he's just mad. He's just mad.
We know Kev put the cap on the football game. But I mean, Dolphins fans. It wasn't just Kevin. Yeah, they were all mad. Yeah. Take that energy. Take that energy, and leave Josh Allen alone and go after your head coach and your GM, like, and your owner. Take that energy and go put it on them.
Right.
Like, you're the one who drafted Tua. Yeah, you're the one who drafted Tua over Justin Herbert. And listen, I'm not here to shit on Tua. I think Tua is a quality NFL quarterback, but he is like a median NFL quarterback, if anything. So it's like, you drafted a guy who should have been a second and third rounder in the top 6. And you passed on a big ball of clay that was Justin Herbert, who, even though, the Ravens and the Patriots have clocked him, I think we can all agree that Justin Herbert's got a pretty nice future. And I really do think we found Joe Miller's burner in Sal Agro here. But anyway, we'll get to that in a second. But their offensive line, if you look at some of the clips today, it was disgusting. Like, it was awful. The offensive line play, like, Oliver was just allowed to walk on by. They were getting confused. Your head coach has one guy calling the plays, has another guy in charge of the running game, and then has Charlie Fry, the former quarterback, now quarterback's coach, calling in the plays from the sideline after the offensive coordinator calls it. There was massive confusion, like coming out of timeouts for the Miami Dolphins. And Brian Flores has yet to hire a competent offensive mind to go along there in Miami. I mean, it's just all the incompetence that's gone along with wasting all that draft capital and all that stuff in Miami. Like, take that energy and put it into what's to be fixed on your football team. Stop worrying about what Josh Allen's doing and start putting a football team on the field that can compete with Josh Allen.
Yeah. And, Brian Flores was kind of a darling last year, even though there were some questionable moves he made last year, right? The way he handled the Fitz Tua situation. And I know they won 10 games, but look what McDermott did, right? In 17, he hired, it was a different situation, but like, he hired experienced guys around him. Like, guy like Leslie Frazier, who had head coaching experience, made him his defensive coordinator, knowing that he had to focus more on head coaching duties. He wanted that defense in his mind to be what he wanted it to be. So that's what he's going to do. And like, obviously it worked out with Brandon Beane as well as the GM. Miami hasn't really had that cohesion from top to bottom and it doesn't always work, right? Like, if it was that easy to do it, teams would do it all the time, but it's not easy, right? A lot of things fell into place for the Bills the right way. Brandon Beane's become an excellent GM. He got out of Carolina somehow, where they left Gettleman there. There were a lot of things that kind of worked out for the Bills in this, right? Hitting on Josh Allen, a ball of clay in his own right, obviously. So, if you're Miami, I can understand why you're upset if you're a Dolphins fan. Like, it hasn't worked out for you. You came off a 10-win season last year, and you were hoping for big things this year with Tua in that team, but it doesn't always work. It's not that easy. And like, the Bills fans know, like, better than anybody, it's how not easy it is after going through almost 20 years and not making the playoffs, right? Countless quarterback, countless head coaches, attempts at drafts, right? Like, it's not easy. So, like you said, take that energy, direct it back towards your own team.
We got Andrew Tatterow saying Dolphins fans like Kevin. I wouldn't throw Kevin in here. Looking at the 2 games this season, thinking they're close to stopping Josh. I think Kevin's pretty realistic about what needs to be done there in Miami. But I do like the second part of your comment there. Josh Allen's going to go back to dropping 5 touchdowns on them next season. I don't disagree with that, because Xavier Howard and Byron Jones, I don't know how long you can sustain paying both of those guys. And I think right now, the biggest issue this year for Josh Allen was just simply the fact that there are 2 elite corners on that football team. Who are really good at what they do, and they take those sidelines away, and Josh really has to work the middle of that football field. I don't know how long Miami can sustain having those 2 guys on their football team.
Well, eventually you need an offense to go with it, right? And like, we saw the Bills in 17 get away with that elite defense. Eventually you need an offense, right, to go with it, because the defense, and I've made this comment before on multiple shows, it is much harder to sustain an elite defense from year to year than it is to sustain an elite level offense. That's just facts. Like, look at the trends of the last 15, 20 years. Jacksonville, Saxonville, right? 2017, historic defense. Blake Bortles at the helm. Again, what happened to them in 2018? Like, there's teams that you can point to with that. It's just really hard if you're Miami. You got to have that offense.
Yeah. And I mean, there were some comments back and forth in the comment section earlier when we were talking about John Feliciano. Sal Argo, who, 95% sure that's Joe Miller's burner, was going back and forth at it with Lone Wolf about John Fina's comments on John Feliciano. Listen, I mean, if John Fina is saying that John Feliciano is an excellent pass blocker and above average run blocker, okay. He was a former all-pro offensive lineman for the Buffalo Bills. That's great. He's the only one saying it. He's the only one. So to me, either he's smart and everyone else is dumb, or there needs to be some more context given. I haven't seen John's quotes on it or anything like that. I'll go and I'll listen to what John had to say. But 99.9% of the people who are talking to me about John Feliciano have one thing to say: he's been hot ass this year, absolute hot ass,
and not the good kind.
And he's had maybe one game maybe one game where he's been average, and the rest he has been a below average offensive guard. And he's nothing more than average, as Kyle Wolston said. Nothing more than average. He's not going to be a Buffalo Bill next year. He's not. Anyone who's watching these games thinking that the Buffalo Bills are going to eat 2 more years of that contract when they have an pretty decent out after this year, they're crazy. That dude's gone after this year. He's not going to be on this football team. He's not going to be the left or the right guard of the Buffalo Bills in 2023, and he's not going to be. His salary would be too high to be a backup. Maybe he finishes out this year as a backup. Maybe he crawls to the finish line of this season as a starter, but he ain't a part of this team's future.
They only it's only a $1.5 million dead cap hit if they cut him after this. It's year.
Nothing, and they did that for a reason, and they did that for an absolute reason. And his play right now is going to get his ass on the unemployment line sooner rather than later. Cole Beasley. I don't think we're going to trade Cole Beasley. Keeper cut or keeper trade. I think we're going to keep him.
Those
Cole
guys
Beasley.
they love to stir up that interaction. I got it. I mean, when I saw that, I was like, ooh. But then I was like, I know you're just trying to drum up conversation. I know what you're doing.
But it's 10 catches, 110 yards for Cole Beasley. I mean, the offensive loss was lost and it found itself in Cole Beasley. Some really good secondary performances from Zach Moss, Gabriel Davis, Tommy Sweeney. Moss had 6 for 39. Davis had 4 for 29, a touchdown, finally got a little bit more involved. Sweeney had 3 for 30. Stephon Diggs, he's on pace for 90 catches, over 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns. He had 5 for 40 on the day and a touchdown. We keep waiting for that breakout game from Stephon Diggs, like that big blockbuster game. Do we finally get it in Jacksonville?
We might. And the funny thing is, like, I think you made the comment, Bruce made the comment, right? Like, he's on pace for like such a
but compared to some other receivers in the league, it's not even close though.
No,
like that's not even a top 10 season or top 15 season in the league this year.
But for a Bills receiver, I mean, he led the league in receptions and yards for receiver last year. And it's just like, we had years and years of futility. Like Lee Evans was there, had those 2 good seasons with like really the one good season with JP. We had T.O. for that 1 year, but like Stevie Johnson for those 3 years. But like we were like just amazingly blessed last year with Stephon Diggs. And now he's on pace for another very, very good season. And we like look at it as its average because of what he did last year, but he's still on pace for such a nice season. I think Jacksonville is a nice spot for him. I mean, let's just keep saying that until it happens so that eventually we could just cut this and like make it look like like good. Matthew says, can we talk about how Poyer Howard are playing the best football of their career so far? Best safety duo in the NFL that no one talks about. And it's been that way for a couple years now, Matthew. Matthew to the minute, or whatever we called your segment. You're dead on right with that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at those 2 guys. They've each had their moments this year where they've made game-changing plays. They're each statistically playing super well. Every offseason, they're disrespected whenever there's like the best safety duo in the league out there, because it's like, well, it's one elite level safety and then another guy who's kind of just a guy, but the fact that he's paired with an elite level safety makes it like a great combo. Like you can't leave a combo with this player. You can't leave him off this list, even if he's paired with this guy. But when you look at Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde, they're both playing all pro football. They're the best safety duo in the league, straight up. Like, I mean, they're straight telepathic by this point. This is what the 4th season they played together. Find me. Can we find? I don't know. We don't have a stat boy here anymore. Yeah, we lost Kendall. We got no stat boy anymore. Is there any safety duo in the league who's played 4 years together like these guys have? I mean, it's absolute telekinesis the way that they can communicate, probably without even exchanging words, just a look. Or just seeing what the other guy does and understanding the defense and understanding the players around them and the plays that they're able to make because of that. They are 100% the best safety combination in the league. Are there better safeties in the league than Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde? Yes. But as a duo, having been in the system for 4 years, having played together for 4 years, they are the best safety duo in the league. Hands down, no question about it.
You're not going to put Dirty Dan and Honey Badger on that list?
I mean, Dirty Dan and Dirty Dan just got benched for Juan Thornhill.
I love Juan Thornhill, though.
So who had a great rookie season, but then tore his ACL in the playoffs and struggled to come back from it. And I don't think you could put anyone on Kansas City's defense in the top anything list
Yeah, that's true.
this year.
That's true. Yeah, I
Um,
mean, it'd be hard to
mhm.
find find a duo longer than those two. This is the longest McDermott has
Yeah.
ever had a second. It is pretty impressive because we keep like wanting
It's
to
all
write
four
Levi
guys. It's all
Wallace
five
off,
guys
and
too.
he
It's all
keeps
five
coming back.
guys. I mean, it's been so Trey White, Micah Hyde, and Jordan Poyer have all been here since 2017, right?
Mhm.
They were both free agents in 2017, first round draft pick in 2017. Then in 2018, you added Teron Johnson in the slot almost from day one. And then Levi Wallace worked his way in there. So it's
Mhm.
now been, I mean, at least 2 full seasons with this secondary. It's absolutely incredible. Like, you don't see that a lot around the league. Like,
Nope.
it's pretty crazy the consistency the Buffalo Bills have had in their secondary. I think a large part of it is when they were able to sign Poyer and Hyde, they were
Mhm.
able to get them in their late 20s. So they didn't have to give them like crazy big contracts like some of these other safeties might get. They drafted Trey White in the first round, and because he is a zone only corner, they were probably able to get him at a reasonable price tag as opposed to a really exorbitant like Jalen Ramsey type of price tag. And Teron Johnson plays the slot, which is typically not the highest paid position ever. And Levi kind of just is a dude. And never has played well.
Well,
Like we did not give him a tender this year. Any team could have signed him. Any team could have said, "Hey, Levi, we'll give you 3 years, $9 million to come be in our secondary." No one wanted him. He came back here for pennies. He came back here for absolute pennies.
And we have to remember Poyer was signed when he was coming off an injury with Cleveland,
Mhm.
and like you said, late 20s. But it wasn't like he was an All Pro or something with
Mhm.
Cleveland before that. And Micah Hyde was a role player for the Packers. Like, he did play some safety, but he was primarily their punt returner. He didn't
Mhm.
play a ton of defense for them, only when he had to. So the Bills took a chance on both of those guys, and them paired together has really worked out. So another one of those situations where the Bills took a chance on
Mhm.
an underutilized or like a below market, if you will,
Mhm.
gamble, and it worked out. And some of them have, and some of them haven't, but a lot of them have. So
Yeah. And Randy comes in here and says, I want to upgrade Levi's spot big time. I don't disagree with you. I mean, against teams like Miami and probably against teams like Jacksonville next week, it's gonna be like, this is why we keep Levi Wallace, blah, 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 blah. But then you're gonna get into some games later on in the season against more high octane offenses. You're gonna be like, that guy's a weakness. I wish we had a more versatile defender in the secondary across from Trey White. I really do think this is a position this offseason where the Buffalo Bills can go out and go get more of I want them to add like a freakish athlete to the defense, like, or to the secondary. You got Teron, who's a little bit undersized nickel. You got Trey White, who, because of size limitations, mostly a zone corner. You got Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde. They're both good safeties, but they're not the greatest athletes in the world. I would like to see the Buffalo Bills go out and get like a lengthy corner, like a guy like Martin Emerson from Mississippi State, like a guy who's like 6'2", pushing 200 pounds. Kyler Gordon from Washington. Go out and get a versatile chess piece who got play on the boundary and can lock some guys down, do a little bit of man stuff in your secondary to allow you to be a little bit more versatile. So, I mean, that's a conversation for the offseason. Or if you're interested, every Thursday morning, you can go and you can type in BF War Room Buffalo Bills draft prospects into your favorite podcasting platform, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and you can listen to me and Randy talk about the 2022 offseason before the season's even over. We talk interior offensive line, we talk cornerbacks, and we talk draft every single week. So a little bit of a shameless plug there. Some more notes I had on my defense: Jerry Hughes, Mario Addison, Gregory Rousseau all had good games. Hughes and Addison with sacks. Their presence was felt. They were really good in run support. Ed Oliver, Star Lotulelei, not going to show up on the stat sheet, but their presence was felt as well.
Rewatching the game, I thought when those two were on the field together,
so much better than Phillips and Butler.
Was the best push the Bills were getting in the middle. Like,
it was noticeably different.
Butler was a complete non-factor, an absolute non-factor. It was night and day, the difference in play. Ed Oliver his get off the line is awesome. He gets push. Him and Starr get push on almost every single play if you go back and watch. I mean, those two, that's my favorite combo right now to watch on the defense, honestly.
Tremaine Edmonds in run support. We already kind of mentioned earlier in the show where like they were kind of biting again on the run, and Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki were able to work the middle of the field a little bit. But Tremaine Edmonds in run support, the Dolphins had 68 yards on 23 carries. It's about 3 yards per carry. Tremaine Edmonds had 8 tackles. 5 of them were on runs that went 3 yards or less. So Tremaine Edmonds in run support had a really good game. Tyler Bass, 16 to 17. He's hit this year. He had a 57-yarder in this game, perfect on PATs. So that rounds out the players who played solid in this football game. Some of the things maybe to criticize a little bit, we've already really talked to death. The offensive line, guards were awful. Morse really does need to be propped up in the running game. Like he needs some bigger guys next to him, whether it's Andrew Norwell or Will Hernandez or giving Ryan Bates a shot. You need some bigger, beefier guys. I think even Mitch Morse is starting to look a little bit sketchy. But I think a lot of that has to do with the two guys that are next to him. And it's also never a good thing. Joe Marino mentioned this on Locked On Bills this morning. It's never a good thing when one guy gets hurt, you have to move three guys. That's not ideal.
Yes.
Not ideal at all. So maybe figure out a good backup right guard. So Darrell Williams just has to slide over to right tackle, and you can fill in at right guard. But that would also include having a competent left guard, which we don't have right now. So anyone who doesn't think offensive line is an issue right now, or anyone who thinks that they're excellent in pass protection and just struggle a little bit in run blocking, like, yeah, there's a reason why the Buffalo Bills moved three guys around when one guy got hurt.
Is that guy?
The offensive line pass rush even got to Josh Allen, like from the interior, like it wasn't great. Josh Allen makes that offensive line look a heck of a lot better than it is. Vernon Butler, bad at football. We've talked about that already. Linebackers and safeties were biting too much in the run game on those slants. Isaiah McKenzie with that muff punt, which we already talked about, that could have been an absolute game breaker. And Matt Hawk, shitty punter, good holder. Joe Marino, again, not to just make this a Cliff Notes of Joe Marino's podcast this morning, but it was a really good post-game breakdown talking about Matt Hott. He's like, you're just gonna have to live with it. He's a shitty punter, but he's a great holder. And you think to yourself, like, well, that's fucking dumb. Find yourself a guy who's good at punting and can hold. Like, it's not hard, right? And it's tough because Corey Bojorquez is probably arguably one of the top 5 punters in the league this year.
Mm-hmm.
But remember that Cincinnati Green Bay game where Mason Crosby, one of the best kickers in the league, kept missing kick after kick after kick after kick, and they've been having some kicking trouble there in Green Bay this year with a kicker who has historically been very, very good at his job. It might be because Corey Bojorquez doesn't know how to fucking hold the football. that might have something to do with it. So maybe we can teach Mitch Trubisky how to hold the football and go get a punter. I don't know what you got to do. But that is it for that. And then the last thing I want to talk about, because Josh Allen is about to come up on the Manning cast, so I want to keep this to about an hour tonight, so we can all go catch Josh Allen on the Manning cast. The AFC landscape, New England 4-4. They just lit up Justin Herbert. Matthew Judon, that defense is starting to really come around. Mac Jones not making a lot of mistakes. Tennessee lost Derrick Henry today, added Adrian Peterson. I'm kind of pumped to watch Adrian Peterson. I think he's going to do work in that offense. But Tennessee's going to come back down to earth. If they would have lost that game to the Colts, it would be a whole different division right there in the AFC South right now, especially with that Henry injury. But
I still like the Colts to maybe push them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
looking at the AFC landscape. Are the Buffalo Bills the best team in the AFC?
Yeah, they are.
Mm-hmm.
Especially now with King Henry. I mean, you could say they were anyway, even with Henry.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they beat us, but the Chiefs have been struggling tonight with the Giants, Ravens. I think the Ravens are still up there. I'd still put them up there. I know they just got beat by Cincinnati, but I mean, Cincinnati's a good team. I still think the Ravens are up there, but I think the Bills, top to bottom, like, are the most complete team. Offense, defense, special teams. Ravens defense really hasn't been that good this year. Like, they really haven't. And the Chargers are a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde right now. The Chiefs defense has not been good either. So you have to say, you look at the Bills, they're probably the most complete team in the AFC.
The Raiders own, not the Raiders, the NFC of the top 5 teams in football right now. 4 of them are NFC teams in the Packers, the Cardinals, the Rams, and the Cowboys. If you look at the top 10, the National Football League, Tampa Bay is also in there for the NFC, and the New Orleans Saints are also in there for the NFC. Famous Jameis out for the year. Maybe they're going to get Phillip Rivers. Who knows? Not worried so much about the NFC right now, but Tennessee, Las Vegas, Baltimore, Buffalo, Cincinnati, LA, Pittsburgh somehow holding in there. New England, Cleveland, Denver. Like, I'm not worried about New England yet. It'll be interesting when we go head to head with them. Definitely not worried about Pittsburgh, despite what they did to us. That team is just going to one injury, and that team's going to fall apart. whether it's to a player on their defense or whether it's to Ben Roethlisberger. They are one injury away from absolutely crumbling. They are just barely sliding through every week. LA seems like Herbert's been figured out. So is Herbert going to pull a Josh Allen and start to improve again? Once they make some adjustments, who knows?
They'll be there at the. I think. I mean,
Mhm.
they're still a very good team. I mean, Herbert
Cincinnati-
had a couple stinkers last year, but he's
Yeah.
still going to be there. Same with Cincinnati. I mean,
We got
Zach Taylor will hold them back, but you already knew that.
we got Cincinnati. Joe Burrow can only do so much. He's got Zach Taylor there. They lost to the Jets this week. Oh, Zach Taylor. And then honestly, Baltimore is number 2 behind Buffalo, in my opinion. And Jason Suggs says here the AFC is the Bills to lose. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Like I said, go enjoy Josh Allen on the Manning Cast. We're gonna wrap things up a little bit early tonight, so everyone can go enjoy that. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, go Bills.
Go Bills.